Music, they say, hide and seek is a children's game. A harmless thrill, full of laughter, innocence, and the excitement of being found. But what if sometimes, the one counting, isn't your friend? What if, in the shadows where you hide, something else is waiting, something that never stopped playing? Tonight, I'll tell you 3 true stories of hide and seek that went wrong. Stories that remind us that fear, while terrifying, also has a lesson buried within it. Because even in darkness, there's something to learn, something to awaken in the heart. It was the summer of 1998 in rural Ohio. The kind of town where nights were so quiet you could hear the hum of streetlights and the distant cry of a train long before it passed. A group of teenagers decided to play hide and seek inside an abandoned farmhouse that stood on the outskirts. It was one of those dares kids make when boredom meets bravery. The old house leaned slightly, its windows bordered, its walls tattooed with time and whispers. People said a family had lived there long ago and vanished without a trace. To the teens it was just a rumor. Perfect place to prove they weren't afraid of anything. Among them was Emily, a quiet girl with curious eyes and a stubborn heart. She was always the one trying to prove she could be brave. When the group started arguing about where to hide, Emily smiled and said she'd go into the basement. The others laughed. No one wanted to go down there. It was damp, dark, and smelled like something old had been sleeping there too long. But Emily didn't hesitate. She wanted to show them she could face what everyone else feared. She descended the creaking stairs with only a weak flashlight in her hand. The light trembled, as if afraid of what it might reveal. The basement was larger than she expected. Shadows gathered in the corners, stretching long and deep. Broken furniture, children's toys, and pieces of forgotten life were scattered across the cold cement floor. She crouched behind a wardrobe, her flashlight flickering like a dying breath. Above her, the others started counting. "Ready or not, here I come," someone shouted. Their voices echoed faintly through the floorboards, fading into laughter. Then the laughter stopped. Emily listened. Her heart thudded so loud it felt like it filled the room. The air grew cold, naturally cold, as though the house itself had drawn a long, silent breath. The silence was heavy. Then she heard it, a faint tapping sound, gentle at first, like fingertips brushing the wood of the wardrobe. "Tap, tap, tap," she whispered. "Guys, not funny." But the tapping didn't stop. It moved, circling around the wardrobe. She held her breath. Then, from behind her, came a whisper so close it touched her ear. "Found you." Emily screamed. Her friends upstairs froze and ran toward the sound. When they reached the basement and turned on their flashlights, she was gone. The wardrobe door hung open, and on the floor lay a small wooden doll wearing the same necklace Emily had been wearing that night. The police searched for days. No sign of struggle. No footprints. No trace. The house was sealed after that. But sometimes, locals say, if you walk by on a quiet night, you can still hear tapping beneath the floorboards, like someone trying to get out. Still waiting to be found. Emily's story isn't just a horror, it's a mirror. Curiosity is a beautiful thing, but it can be dangerous when we let it lead us blindly into the dark. We all have a basement in our hearts, places filled with things we've buried. Regrets, fears, secrets. Sometimes, we need to go there to understand ourselves. But when we do, we must bring light, not pride. Emily's courage was real, but her need to prove she was brave led her too far. Maybe that's the lesson. Bravery isn't walking into the dark. It's knowing when to stop, when to turn back, when to listen to the still small voice inside that says, "This isn't right." True courage is wisdom. And sometimes, the scariest thing isn't the dark, it's what happens when we ignore the light trying to guide us home. Years later, another story would surface. Different place, same game. A small cabin in the woods of Montana. A brother and sister, Caleb and Lily, played hide and seek every night before bed. Their laughter echoed through the wooden halls, innocent and bright, until one stormy night, Lily hid too well. Caleb searched every room, calling her name over the roar of thunder, but she didn't answer. The wind rattled the windows as the storm grew violent. Then, from outside, he heard her giggle, soft and distant, near the trees. He grabbed a lantern and ran into the rain, calling out for her. The forest loomed dark, the trees like black pillars, piercing the sky. Lightning flashed, illuminating the silhouette of a small girl standing near the creek. "Lily!" he cried, running toward her. But as she turned her head, the next lightning bolt froze him in place. Her mouth was too wide, her eyes were hollow, her skin pale as snow. The lantern slipped from his hand. When the next flash came, she was gone. They found Lily's body the next morning, near the water. She had drowned before the storm even began. The sound Caleb heard, the giggle he chased, was something else entirely. From that night on, Caleb didn't speak for years. But over time, he found another way to express himself. He painted paintings full of silence, loneliness, and grief, yet somehow beautiful. When asked why he painted, he said something that stayed with me. Because sometimes, silence teaches us more than sound ever could. His story reminds us that the real horror isn't always in what we sit, is in what we don't listen to. The warning signs we ignore, the voices we silence, the emotions we bury. Sometimes, silence is where pain hides, but it's also where healing begins. We fear silence because it forces us to face ourselves. Yet, just like Caleb, when we finally stop running from it, we find meaning in the quiet. Sometimes, it's in the stillness that we hear our soul speak again. There was another story, one that's haunted me ever since I first heard it. It came from Japan, sometime in the 1980s. A group of friends played a strange version of hide and seek. They'd each sit in front of a mirror before the game started, whispering to their reflections, asking for luck, believing the mirror was a gateway to another realm. They thought it was harmless, just superstition. But one girl, Iko, refused. She said mirrors weren't toys. She said reflections remember the things we forget. The others laughed at her fear. The next morning, their parents found them asleep on the floor, cold, pale, their bodies limp, but their reflections standing. Each one staring outward, eyes unblinking. Iko was the only one untouched. She said she heard whispers in her dreams that night, voices from beyond the glass saying, "We've been waiting." Iso's warning lingers in my mind. When you call the darkness for fun, don't be surprised when it answers. Life is full of things we don't understand. Some doors look beautiful until we open them. Not everything needs to be explored. Curiosity without respect turns into danger. Sometimes, the greatest strength is knowing when to walk away. Hide and seek, in its simplest form, is about being found, about the thrill of being seen again after hiding in fear. But these stories show something deeper, that sometimes the things we hide from, our pain, our past, our truth, will always find us. They wait patiently, in silence, until we're ready to face them. The ghosts, the whispers, the reflections, they're not always out there. Sometimes they're inside us. There's a story from Maine that proves this in the most haunting way. Local legend tells of a ghostly seeker boy who froze to death in a snowstorm while searching for his friends. They say, if you play hide and seek in the woods on a winter night, you'll hear a whisper behind you counting 1, 2, 3. A boy named Mason once dared to try it. He went into those woods alone, snow crunching under his boots, his breath sharp in the cold air. When he heard the whisper, instead of running, he stopped. He whispered back, "Ready or not?" The counting stopped. The air grew still. And then he walked home safely. Maybe that's what it takes sometimes, to stop running from what scares us. To face it. To look fear in the eye and say, "I'm ready." Because fear loses its power when we stop giving it permission to chase us. And maybe, just maybe, that's what all these stories are really about. People hiding from things, monsters, memories, guilt, grief, and being found by something they didn't expect. Every time we hide, something seeks us, but not all seekers are evil. Some are lessons. Some are growth. Some are love disguised as fear, pushing us to come out, to be seen, to be whole again. When I think about all these tales, the tapping from beneath the floorboards, the laughter from the trees, the reflections that move when we don't, I realize they all carry one truth. Fear will always exist. But it's not meant to paralyze us. It's meant to teach us, to awaken something within us. Because every time we face what terrifies us, we take back a piece of our strength. So maybe the next time you hear footsteps when you're alone, or feel the air shift in a quiet room, don't just think of ghosts. Think of reminders that life is fragile, precious, fleeting, that we should never waste our moments hiding from it. Because the real horror isn't in being found, it is in never allowing ourselves to be seen at all. Music fades softer. becoming tender fear and faith live side by side. Every dark hallway has a door leading back to the light. Sometimes, we just need to walk far enough to find it. So if you ever feel lost, if life feels like one long game of hide and seek, where no one ever calls your name, remember this: someone always is. Something divine, unseen, searching for you in every shadow. And maybe that's the lesson behind every horror story, that even in the darkest moments, something sacred is seeking to bring you home. Soft piano lingers in the background when fear finds you. Don't run. Breathe. Listen. Learn. Because even in horror, there's beauty. Even in darkness, there's meaning. And when the seeker finally calls your name, may you have the courage to step into the light and say, "Here I am." Music fades to silence.